As with most of my videos, I don't claim to be an expert on anything. I just like to document my projects for myself and share it with some of my viewers. I recently had a decent experience with a local HVAC technician who would rather teach a man to fish, and I'd like to share that experience with you now. At the end of the video, I'll recap with an interesting anecdote, but it in no way diminishes the informational experience I had with the HVAC technician. When the technician came in recently to do preventive maintenance, I noticed right away he was checking a lot of things that the other guys never checked, and one of those was this indoor motor capacitor. He showed me on a meter test that the capacitor should have been 5 microfarad, and instead it was measuring less. He said this was a weak capacitor and the fan motor might not start up at some point in the future, and he recommended replacing it. Oh, that little guy. Yeah, cool. How much? $170 was the quoted price. Now, he looked around my shop and saw that I was a maker and handy with electronics, and we started talking about options. I asked to see the specifications on the worn capacitor, and within 3 minutes of checking on Amazon, I found one for under $10 that was a quality product. I told him I would order one and replace it myself, and we went on to have a nice chat as he cleaned the condenser drain, checked the outdoor capacitors, cleaned the squirrel cage, and so forth. It was a good experience. A pretty simple setup. This bracket was screwed into the side of the housing with a sheet metal screw, and it wrapped around the capacitor and held it in place. There are 2 crimp connectors on the spade terminals on top. Now I'm used to dealing with DC, but with the AC there's no polarity, so we just pop them off. And there's our capacitor. Let's take it over to the bench and measure it. Okay, here's the old weak capacitor. This is a 5 mic, plus or minus 10%, 370 volt AC. Let's measure it here on the meter and see what it's reading. It's supposed to be a 5. Give it a little time to charge. Seems to be hanging in at about 3.6, and it should be a 5. Okay, let's meter our new one. It's supposed to be a 5. I believe plus or minus 6% or 8%, I can't read it, and 370 volt AC. And he's supposed to be 5, and he's measuring a little over 5. So good. The form factor on the old capacitor was round, and it had this metal bracket with this screw that held it into the housing, as you saw. Now, when I ordered this online, the technician saw that it was an oval capacitor, and I asked about it, and he said, oh, let me go to the truck. And he brought back this bracket that he fashioned up for me. So, real nice guy. That should fit good. I had a bit of a dry run off camera here, and what I found out was that this bracket, when it was clipped in here appropriately, the capacitor still could slip up and down inside this bracket, and because of the vibration of the fan, I didn't want to have any problems with it, with the wiring and things like that. So I wrote on top 5 microfarad 370 volt AC with a marker, and then I ended up just wrapping it in electrical tape, which gives it a real good grip here. Now, the hardest part about this project was trying to get this thing installed here and turn this screw in while staying out of the way of my light and the camera for you guys. It was really awkward. And that screw up there, that sharp screw out on the upper right there, I know that thing's going to bite me. I just see it coming. And for those of you rooting for the screw, there's your money shot. All right, let's fire it up. let it run for a while, and then I'll turn it back off. And then back on once again. So my point to this is, I feel better about using this company for my service because this HVAC technician didn't gouge me and taught me how to fish, so to speak. And yes, they do have to pay their employees and insurance and benefits and that type of thing. I'm not trying to take work from them, but it just seemed extremely high for what had to be done here. And I would have never done that for anybody in my computers. $75, $100, that sounds reasonable, not $170. But I don't really want to concentrate on that. I mean, there's something to be said for the fact that this guy in this company had the experience to know that this was going to be a problem, and they should be rewarded for that, monetarily. Now, here's my little anecdote, which is kind of neat. There's often a story that I tell. There was a company that had a piece of machinery, and it just was critical to their production, their efficiency, and they were making all kind of mistakes, and it wasn't working right, and it was jamming up, and they were losing money. And the owner called a guy and said, "You got to come in here. You gotta fix this." And he was the expert on this machine, and he said, "Just do whatever you got to do, make it happen." So the expert comes in, he looks down inside, and he goes, I think I can fix this. Just do whatever you got to do. So he reaches in, turns a screw down in the very bottom, a quarter turn counterclockwise, and it was an adjustment. And the machine ran beautifully after that for weeks, and they had great production, and they didn't have any problems with anything. And later on, they get a bill from the expert, and it's for $100,000. And they blew their top. They're like, all you did was come in here, and you turned a screw, and you're charging us $100,000. I want you to resubmit the invoice. So a couple weeks later, they get a resubmitted invoice from the expert, and it still says $100,000. But below it, it says, turn screw quarter of a turn to the left or counterclockwise, 1 cent. Knowing which screw to turn and how far to turn it, $99,999.99, right? Okay, so you get where this is going here. It's like, I do appreciate that these guys had the knowledge to know what was wrong, and they should be rewarded for that. But there's a point where I think you just know in your heart and your mind, maybe, if you're into this stuff, that it's just over the top. It's not something that I want to pay that much for. So this is not a political rant. This is not anything against HVAC technicians. It's just something that, if you can save yourself some money, if you talk to these people and if you can learn some things, and don't be a dope about it. Ask questions, be involved. You may be surprised what people will help you with. It's your house after all. So I hope this has been informative and somewhat entertaining, and thanks for watching.